The next planet, Saturn, is also a gas giant, not as big as Jupiter, but Saturn is my favorite. And Saturn is famous for its rings. We've all heard of Saturn's rings and seen images. If you catch the rings at the right angle and you look through a telescope, you'll be lucky enough to see them. It's quite beautiful. I actually saw it through a telescope, and through the viewfinder took a picture with my cell phone. So I have a picture of Saturn on my phone, which is quite cool. Saturn's been visited 4 times by spacecraft, and has 62 moons. So 2 most interesting moons are the big one, Titan, that we all know about, but really Enceladus has water, liquid water, shooting out of vents all over Enceladus. And this is very interesting because it's liquid water somewhere else in our solar system. Saturn's rings. So what's difficult is Saturn has 12 main ring systems, but how you divide those rings up depends on how many of the gaps that you count. So generally, if you count the main gaps, there are actually 30 rings, but you can count many more rings depending on how big you make the gaps. It's a very substantial ring system. Also interesting about Saturn is that it has aurora. So on Earth, we have the northern lights. So I explained to you that we have a magnetic field surrounding us, and when charged ions come from the solar winds, sometimes they get trapped in our magnetic field, and it creates these lights we see in the north and the south, these beautiful colors in the sky that we refer to as the northern or southern lights. They're actually called aurora. Saturn has those too, but they're in the shape of a hexagon, and they're quite amazing to see. I would highly recommend you go on the NASA site and look them up. Okay, the next 2 gas giants are smaller than Jupiter and Saturn, and we actually call them ice giants because they do have rock and ice in them, and they have water in their atmosphere. They also have methane in their outer atmosphere, which gives them a blue color, which is quite beautiful. Both Uranus and Neptune have faint ring systems, and both of them have been visited once by spacecraft. They have moons. Neptune, I think, has 14 moons, and Uranus has how many? This is a good question. 27 moons. Uranus has 27 moons. Sorry about that. So Uranus orbits the Earth the Sun every 84 years. So we go around the Sun in 1 year, and it takes 84 of our years to go around the Sun once. And Neptune takes 160 odd, I think 165 years to go around the Sun once. So those are the 8 planets, but then of course there's always Pluto. Those of us who are old grew up with Pluto being a planet, but then Pluto got downgraded to a dwarf planet. The reason for this is how we define planets. Planets can be called a planet if they circle the sun, orbit the sun, if they have enough mass and self-gravity that they create a ball-like shape. Pluto does do both of those things. It is a ball-like shape and it does orbit the sun. The other criteria is that when a planet was forming, it cleared its own path. So it cleared its own orbit of other materials. It all got compacted into one planet. But Pluto's orbit is not clear. There's a lot of debris in its orbit, so it actually doesn't qualify as a planet. Pluto has 5 moons, but Pluto itself is actually smaller than our moon. And one of its moons are very big, so they almost rotate around each other. So it's a very cool, complicated little system around Pluto. Pluto is at the beginning of what we call the Kuiper belt. This is a big belt that surrounds our solar system. We don't really know what's there, but we assume that there may be a lot of dwarf planets and big pieces of rock, kind of like the asteroid belt. Beyond that is the Oort cloud. Don't know if I pronounced that perfectly. And that contains a lot of ice, a lot of big pieces of ice, and that's where a lot of our comets come from. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. If you have any questions, let me know. And have a lovely evening. Hope you're all staying safe.